It won't be blank for long. It's all part of the plan.
Welcome to the Third One channel, where today we are reviewing the 4th episode of the 2nd season of the iCarly reboot. This one is called iHire an Assistant, and we get the return of a great original character, and an insight to the Shay family. Quick spoiler warning, but let's get into the review. The episode is divided into more or less 12 scenes, split between a main plot and a subplot, which eventually converge in the culminating scene. The main storyline here is the rekindling between Granddad Shay, Carly, and Spencer, and our subplot has to do with Harper, Pearl, and Freddie, and whether any of them are meant to be. Let's break down the plot of this episode from the viewpoint of our characters. We will start, as always, with Carly. Carly has a new passion project for iCarly to do with growing plants. She calls it Plant Cam. Spencer immediately calls her out on it, saying that she reminds him of a lonely widow. Ouch. But nonetheless, it seems Carly is busy with the channel, barely having any spare time, or maybe that's just due to her lack of time management skills. Carly and Spencer find out that they are getting a visit from one of their only family members, which they mention specifically. More on that later, but the visitor is a great return of Granddad Shay, who featured in the memorable episode of the 1st season of iCarly, I Want to Stay with Spencer. In Granddad's return, Carly realizes that Granddad is quite a skilled time manager, and notices that he's bored otherwise and offers him a job as an assistant. He gladly agrees. Some time passes and Carly's goodwill is exploited again as Granddad flips the script on her, slowly making her his assistant, and starting his own show on iCarly with Millicent's help to do with his passion of coins. When it all goes too far, Carly fires Granddad, but this is quickly overshadowed by a much greater problem. In the end, Carly and Granddad are left on great terms as he returns home after declaring himself to have overstayed his welcome.
What do you need, Radical Rosemary? More water? Less water? Sparkling water? Use your words!
Freddie has found something that he truly does not understand or agree with. Horoscopes. How does this come up? Well, Pearl is massively into horoscopes and a firm believer, as is Harper, who joins the two for a J-smop. Don't ask. But when Freddie reveals his horoscope to Harper, she exclaims, "Oh no," in worry. Harper and Freddie have a perfect horoscope match. However, soon after it is revealed that Freddie and Pearl also have a perfect match. Harper and Pearl are convinced that the only way to see who is meant to be with Freddie is to do salsa dancing. Freddie at this point is completely lost and his patience is plentiful, so he goes along with it, but he does mention very clearly who likes who here. In the end, Harper dances salsa beautifully with Freddie, and Pearl is not as compatible with Freddie. However, this all ends in a bit of a weird note as Harper sees the girl she likes and says to Pearl, "Freddie's all yours," and that's what we are kind of left with. As a side note, we finally get to see Freddie's pet match business finally up and running and working with Pearl's help professionally.
Now we just have to see who matches with him physically.
Only one way to do that.
Here? Now?
Spencer has figured out what he wants from the groovy smoothie space. He has now opened Shay What? A restaurant with hip yet retro furniture. If anything, this place proves what an excellent artist and visionary Spencer is. He's excited about his new place, but in this episode there's something that takes the front seat instead, getting the approval of his granddad. He was ready to go to the extent of dyeing his hair and dressing like an old man in order to get some bonding ground with Granddad Shay. Upon Granddad's arrival, he is still not impressed, or at least he does not come off as being impressed. However, when Granddad is in trouble, Spencer comes up with a brilliant plan to solve the problem the most Spencer way possible. Granddad is relieved and finally admits to being proud of Spencer, something he knew Spencer wanted to hear. A truly great moment comes along with this with a Shay family hug, and Spencer also now has a very cool and valuable coin mural.
Actually, I think you'll still be able to. The coins will be hidden in plain sight at Shay What forever.
Harper accompanies Freddie and Pearl in this episode to basically see if they're a good match. After much talk about horoscopes, Harper finds out that she has many good matches in theory and is her usual playful self, dancing with at least 4 people this episode. She seems to be getting over her breakup now, but more on that in the analysis portion of this video. Lastly, we reach Millicent, who time and time again falls more on the wayside of our stories. She joins Harper, Freddie, and Pearl briefly for some time at Shay What, where she joins the discussion about horoscopes, and later teams up with Granddad Shay, who slips her at least $70 this episode. She turns out to be an unsurprisingly great assistant, and proves again that she is always where the money is. Now, let's talk about some Easter eggs. First of all, Shay What is filled with Easter eggs, but viewers of this channel know that I've already talked about these in detail in the episode 4 predictions video. Go check out like the first 4 minutes of that video if you're interested, and subscribe not to miss daily iCarly coverage. Next, we obviously get the return of Granddad Shay. It's always awesome when they bring back original characters, but in this case, just like the original, one episode dedicated to this family member will probably suffice. There are some really interesting things we learned about Granddad Shay in this episode, which I'll talk about in a separate video. But with Granddad Shay, we finally get further mention of the Shay family, when Carly says that he is practically the only family they have, along with their dad. Big Easter egg there, especially in regards to the fact that we don't know anything about Carly's mom's side of the family. We got a subtle little Easter egg about Freddy's mom's tendency to place tracking devices and things associated to Freddy, or Freddy. Most will remember at least 2 occasions in the original where this is important, in I Go to Japan and I Still Psycho. Along with Granddad, we also get the mention of his hometown, Yakima, which in the original was potentially where Carly was going to move to. Next, in the original iCarly, there was a subplot of Spencer getting an assistant, which I always thought was amazing. Maybe this episode is a bit of a nod to that as well. We get a subtle mention of the Season 1 location, Skybucks, as well, in this episode. And the final and most subtle Easter egg was when Spencer sneaks in the line, "Leave it all to me," a small yet very fun nod to the show. And now, my favorite part of the video, which I'll try to keep short, analysis and takeaways, and a highlighted scene. Scene 11 in this episode is by far the longest and most important. It is our culmination. This is where we see Spencer's plan in action and the success of it, finally granting Spencer that appreciation of his granddad he so longed for. We get a great Shay family hug, one that will go down in iCarly's history, I'm sure, with a mural also dedicated to this moment.
Family hug. Spencer, Carly, you can always count on me.
Now, analysis. First up, I mentioned how Millicent fell to the wayside yet again in this episode. To me, she truly feels like the 5th most important character, kind of like who in the original? Gibby. Just something to think about. Harper seems to be in a state of at least slight disarray after her breakup. Her real feelings seem to be confused, as she even considers having Freddy as a partner. Surely this is all still some stage of grief. Carly has really transitioned out of the goofy content of the show, now focusing on things she enjoys, like growing plants. It was pretty funny how her granddad's coin show was more popular, but what is the future of the show? Is Pearl really a good match for Freddy? It seems like he was patient in this episode for something that he didn't believe in, but can this go the distance? I hear all the critics screaming no in the chat, which I definitely agree with. A little takeaway from this episode is the excellent job of the previously mentioned on this channel choreographer, and what he did in this episode with the salsa dancing. It was great. There are a few things in this episode that could be foreshadowing. Maybe Carly does get a proper assistant in the future, or Carly also mentions to have had an irregular cycle, and there's also a mention of a collab. Surely these are all things to consider. But my final takeaway from this episode would be that it was entertaining and tied the overarching story pretty well. Brought some of the original aspects of the show in as well with Granddad, and generally quality of the visuals and the dance, etc. was really good. Enjoyed it more than last week's episode. It was solid. But that's it for this review. Let me know what I missed and subscribe if you have not already. Thanks for watching the Third Win channel, and stay tuned for plenty of iCarly content this week. See you guys soon.